Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a look at a really different approach to therapy called the Unity Method. It offers a totally new way to think about healing, and honestly, it challenges some of the most common ideas we have about mental health. So let's dive right in and see what it's all about. Right off the bat, this is the core idea of the Unity Method, and it's so much more than just a nice, hopeful slogan. It's the scientific and ethical starting line for everything else. It's a belief system that, from the very beginning, just completely rejects the idea that a person can be inherently broken. Now, to really get why the Unity Method is such a big deal, we first have to understand the problem it's trying to solve. And that's this crisis of labels we have in mental health, which, when you get right down to it, is a crisis of identity. Okay, look at the language here. It's a subtle difference, but it causes a huge, seismic shift. Psychology gave us these terms to describe a temporary state. You have symptoms of depression. But somewhere along the way, these descriptions have twisted into identities. That little jump from having something to being something, well, that's where the problem really kicks in. Because when a label becomes who you are, it can feel like you're trapped in a psychological cage. It hammers home this idea that you're just permanently damaged. And this way of thinking completely ignores what we know for a fact about neuroplasticity, which is the brain's incredible, proven ability to rewire itself its entire life. So a diagnosis that was meant to help can instead feel like a life sentence of shame.
So how did we even get here? Well, this wasn't created on purpose. Psychology has always been evolving, always searching for better ways to heal. To really see why the Unity Method feels like the next logical step, let's just quickly look at the journey that brought us to this point.
If you look at this timeline, you can really see how our understanding has grown. First, psychoanalysis gave us the talking cure, digging into our past. Then you had behaviorism, which focused on what you could see, our actions. Humanism came along and reminded us of our inherent worth. Then the cognitive revolution with things like CBT gave us practical tools to manage our thoughts. And more recently, the somatic turn helped us realize that the body physically holds on to trauma. The Unity Method doesn't throw any of this away. It's all about integrating the wisdom from each step into one more complete picture.
And that brings us right to the revolutionary idea at the very heart of the Unity Method. This is the big pivot, the one idea that changes everything that comes after it.
This is it. This is the starting point. Before any technique, before a diagnosis is even on the table, Unity says this is the ground truth. It's a radical rejection of the deficit-based models that have been dominant for, well, over a century. You're not a problem that needs to be solved. You're a whole person who needs to be rediscovered. So this shift in principle leads to a massive shift in practice. The whole line of questioning changes. We stop asking what is wrong with you, and instead we get really curious and ask what happened to you. This reframes things like anxiety or anger not as flaws, but as these brilliant survival strategies that your system developed to help you get through something. Now, this is a powerful philosophy for sure, but how does it actually translate into a practical process? How does this method actually work day to day? Let's break it down. The whole method is built on these 5 interlocking pillars, and they're not really separate steps, but more like a dynamic system that works together. It all starts with wholeness, then moves into the somatic, which means the body, because that's where true healing begins. It's relational, using therapy to help you relearn what safety feels like. And it's neuroplastic, teaching you how your brain can actually change. And finally, it emphasizes acceptance. This is the basic architecture for guiding someone from a story of being broken back to their own wholeness. Let's look a little closer at what makes this so different. Somatic restoration means we're not just talking about things, we're actually working with the body. Why? Well, because trauma isn't just a memory, it's a physical state. It's that fight or flight response stuck in the on switch. Relational repatterning uses the safety of the therapy relationship to help the nervous system literally calm down and remember what safety feels like. And neuroplastic empowerment, this is so crucial. It's about teaching people the real science of how their brain can physically change, which gives back this incredible sense of hope and control. So, what does this actually look like for a person in therapy? What's the real-world impact of shifting from seeing yourself as broken to seeing yourself as a whole person who's just adapted to their circumstances? Let's take a look at Sarah. Through the old pathology lens, she is her diagnosis. She is borderline. She is broken. But through the Unity lens, that diagnosis doesn't define her at all. She's seen as a whole person whose emotional intensity is reframed as a brilliant, adaptive strategy for surviving abandonment. Suddenly, her emotions aren't a liability. They're proof of her powerful drive to connect. And this, right here, is the result. This quote is the transformation. Sarah gets to re-author her own story. She moves from a narrative of disorder to a narrative of resilience, of strength, and of profound dignity. This isn't just learning a new coping skill, this is a fundamental shift in her identity. So the crucial takeaway here is this. Unity isn't about just adding another technique to a therapist's collection. It's about replacing the entire toolbox. It's a fundamental change in the tools, the approach, and the entire philosophy we use to understand human suffering and healing. So we'll leave you with this final, really powerful question. What if therapy wasn't about fixing what's broken, but about simply remembering the wholeness that was never actually lost in the first place? That's the future the Unity method is working towards. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.